All right. Welcome to another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be looking at how societal structures and personal psychology kind of intertwine. And we'll be exploring how those things potentially shape our beliefs and behaviors
Yeah,
in ways that we might not even realize.
absolutely.
We've got some fascinating philosophical discussions to unpack, all based on this YouTube channel called Bascar Hypnomachie.
Yeah, I think this will be a good one.
Get ready to challenge some conventional thinking as we delve into restorative justice,
Right.
cultural myths,
Those are always fun.
and the potential for individual transformation even within these larger structures.
It's easy to accept things as they are, but this deep dive aims to make you more aware of those influences and how to navigate them.
Okay, so let's jump right in.
Let's do it.
One of the videos we'll be looking at today contrasts restorative justice
Okay.
with patriarchal justice.
Interesting.
Now, for those unfamiliar with restorative justice, it focuses on addressing the harm and rehabilitating offenders rather than just simply punishing them.
And what's amazing is that studies have actually shown that restorative justice programs
Really?
can reduce recidivism rates by up to 50%
Wow.
compared to traditional justice systems.
That's a big difference.
It is.
It makes you really question our current approach, which often seems more focused on just retribution
Yeah,
than rehabilitation.
absolutely.
So that's a pretty compelling statistic.
It is.
It seems like restorative justice isn't just some idealistic theory.
No.
It actually works.
Yeah.
But what would a society based on these principles actually look like?
That's a great question.
I mean, do they offer any specific examples?
Well, the source doesn't give us like a concrete blueprint or anything.
Okay.
But imagine a world, a system that prioritizes healing
Right.
and reconciliation over punishment.
Okay.
And instead of simply incarcerating offenders, we might see more community-based programs that address like the root causes of crime
Yeah.
and help offenders actually reintegrate back into society.
So it's not just about locking people up and throwing away the key.
No.
It's about actually understanding the underlying issues and trying to address those.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that people can become productive members of society again.
I mean, that's a pretty radical shift in mindset.
It is.
It's from punishment to healing, you know?
Yeah,
Makes you think about what we actually value as a society.
it does.
So it's a very thought-provoking idea.
For sure.
And this leads us to the source's exploration of cultural myths
Ah, yes.
and their influence
Okay.
on how we understand ourselves in the world.
Right.
These myths, they can be found in our stories, our religious beliefs,
Yeah.
even fairy tales, really.
All over the place.
They shape our perceptions,
Yeah.
often without us realizing it.
Consciously.
And they use some interesting examples to illustrate this,
Okay.
like the recurring motif of twins in mythology,
Oh, like what?
like Cain and Abel,
Right.
or Castor and Pollux.
Oh, okay.
And these stories, they often revolve around conflict
Yeah.
and sacrifice,
Interesting.
suggesting like a deeper narrative
Mm-hmm.
embedded in our collective consciousness.
Right, right.
Yeah, and there's also this reinterpretation
Okay.
of even familiar figures
Like,
the devil
oh, wow.
in Christian mythology.
Interesting.
So instead of seeing him as like a purely evil entity, they suggest he might represent like these darker,
Yeah.
repressed aspects of ourselves
Okay.
that we project outwards.
So it's not like an external force.
Right.
It's something within us.
Exactly. It's like this scapegoat mechanism
Mm.
where we blame something outside of ourselves for our own internal struggles.
Interesting take.
So are they saying that all cultural myths are inherently negative?
I don't think so, no.
I-
It's more about recognizing
Yeah.
the potential that they have to perpetuate like harmful ideologies
Right.
or even justify violence
Oh.
when they operate on this unconscious level.
So the key is to become aware of them
Right.
and critically examine their impact
Exactly.
on our beliefs and behaviors.
Yeah.
It's like we're all living in a state of societal hypnosis,
Kind of, yeah.
blindly following these narratives
Yeah.
without even realizing it.
Without even knowing.
Is that what they're getting at?
I think so.
This whole cultural myth thing?
Yeah, they're saying that these myths can act as a form of mass hypnosis,
Oh, wow.
shaping our perceptions and influencing our choices
Yeah.
without us consciously being aware of it.
It's a powerful idea.
It is.
It might make some people uncomfortable.
Yeah,
It definitely gave me pause
me too.
to consider the narratives that I've internalized
Yeah, for sure.
over the years, you know.
Absolutely.
But if we are under this societal hypnosis, is there any hope of breaking free?
The source believes there is.
Okay.
Awareness is that first step.
Right.
And by recognizing the influence of these narratives, we can start to question them and make more conscious choices.
So it's not about just blindly accepting everything.
No.
Told, it's about critically examining it.
Exactly.
And then making our own decisions.
Right.
Based on that.
And they emphasize the importance of verticality in this process.
Now, what is verticality?
So in this context, it refers to developing inner strength and autonomy,
Okay.
relying less on those external authorities for validation.
Interesting.
So think of it like cultivating a strong inner compass,
Yeah,
a sense of self-reliance
I like that.
that allows you to navigate the world without being swept away by societal expectations.
So instead of looking to other people or institutions for validation,
Yeah.
we need to cultivate that inner knowing and trust in our own judgment.
Exactly.
I mean, that definitely resonates with me, but how do we actually do that?
Well, that's where the concept of hypnomachy comes in,
Okay.
which the source proposes as a playful and confrontational approach
Right.
to deconstructing those limiting narratives. We've internalized. So think of it as like a playful rebellion
I like that.
against the forces that seek to control our minds.
That sounds intriguing.
It is.
Can you give us some concrete examples? Like, how does this hypnomachy play out in real life?
Okay, so the source offers some insightful critiques of various movements and ideologies, like feminism and utilitarianism,
Okay.
to show how even well-intentioned movements can get trapped in the systems they're trying to change.
I see. They were also pretty critical of the university system,
They were.
weren't they?
Yes.
And I think this is particularly relevant for our listeners.
Yes, it's definitely.
You know, they're people who value learning and expanding their knowledge.
Absolutely.
And the source argues that while universities can be incredible spaces
Yes.
for intellectual growth,
Totally.
they can also prioritize credentials
Yeah.
and conformity
Yeah.
over genuine intellectual curiosity.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. So it's almost like the pursuit of academic prestige can sometimes stifle true intellectual exploration and critical thinking.
It's something to think about.
It is a little unsettling, but definitely something to consider.
It is.
So even in structured environments,
Right.
like universities, there's still room for individual agency
Yes.
and critical thinking.
Absolutely.
It's not all just about following the rules
No.
and getting those credentials.
It's about more than that.
It's about actually using your mind
Exactly.
to explore and to question.
Yes.
That's an empowering thought.
It is.
But does the source offer any practical advice?
Well, they delve into some fascinating examples,
Oh.
like the infrahumanization that occurs in military training,
Oh,
the manipulation techniques used in the pickup artist community,
better.
and even the psychological dynamics of cults.
Interesting.
They argue that by understanding these manipulative tactics,
Yeah.
we can become more resistant to them.
Okay. And more discerning in our choices.
Right.
So it's about knowing how these things work
Yeah.
so we can avoid being manipulated.
Exactly.
I mean, those are some pretty heavy examples.
They are.
It sounds like they're really highlighting the potential dangers of unchecked authority and the importance of critical thinking in all aspects of life.
Absolutely.
But how can we apply these insights to our own lives?
Right.
You know, especially in situations that aren't as extreme as military training or cults.
Well, one key aspect is self-knowledge.
Okay.
The source argues that understanding our own biases and vulnerabilities is essential for navigating these complex systems.
Yeah, makes sense.
By becoming more aware of our own inner workings, we can better understand how external forces might be influencing us.
And make more conscious choices.
Exactly.
So we need to turn that critical lens inward, examine our own beliefs and behaviors with the same scrutiny we apply to the world around us.
Absolutely.
But self-knowledge can be daunting.
It can.
Where do we even begin?
The source suggests practices like introspection, meditation, and therapy can be incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
It's about creating space for reflection,
Right.
quieting the noise of the external world,
Yeah.
and tuning into our own inner voice.
So it's about creating that inner sanctuary
Yes.
where we can connect with our authentic selves
Exactly.
and develop a stronger sense of who we are and what we stand for.
Absolutely.
But what about the world outside that inner sanctuary?
Okay.
How do we engage with those societal systems and structures
Yeah.
without getting swept away by their currents?
The source emphasizes the importance of cultivating a sense of healthy skepticism, questioning assumptions,
Right.
seeking out diverse perspectives.
Yeah.
Instead of just blindly accepting the narratives we're given,
Yeah.
we need to develop the habit of asking questions,
Okay.
challenging the status quo,
Right.
and seeking out alternative viewpoints.
So it's about becoming more conscious consumers of information, more aware of the hidden agendas that might be lurking beneath the surface.
Yeah.
But doesn't that run the risk of making us overly cynical or distrustful?
It's a balance.
Okay.
The key is to remain open to new information
Right.
while critically evaluating its validity.
So it's not about rejecting everything outright. It's about being discerning.
Yes.
Okay.
Remember, the goal isn't to tear down everything,
Right.
but to build something better,
Yeah.
something more authentic and life-affirming.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, this all sounds very individualistic.
Okay.
Does the source address the role of community in this process at all?
Absolutely.
Okay.
While they do emphasize individual agency and self-reliance,
Right.
they also acknowledge the role of community in supporting personal growth.
Okay.
So surrounding yourself with people who encourage critical thinking, who value authenticity, and are committed to personal growth
That's important.
can be incredibly valuable.
Yeah, so it's about finding your tribe. You know, your community of like-minded individuals
Exactly.
who can challenge and support you on your journey.
Yeah.
But this journey of self-discovery and societal critique,
Yeah.
it sounds like it could be pretty challenging.
It can be.
Does the source acknowledge that?
They do, yeah. They
Uh-huh.
talk about the potential for alienation,
Right.
the discomfort of challenging deeply held beliefs,
Yeah.
and the resistance we might face from others
Right.
who are invested in maintaining the status quo.
Of course.
So cultivating resilience,
Okay.
embracing discomfort,
Mm-hmm.
and developing a strong sense of self-worth
Right.
are essential for navigating these challenges.
It sounds like we need to develop a thick skin
You do?
and a strong sense of purpose to stay true to ourselves
Yeah,
in the face of opposition.
absolutely.
But what about when that opposition becomes more aggressive?
Okay.
How do we deal with the inevitable backlash
Right.
we might face
Yeah.
when we start questioning the dominant narratives and systems?
It can be intimidating to go against the grain.
You can.
The source suggests cultivating courage,
Okay.
developing effective communication skills,
Right.
and finding allies who share our values.
So it's not about being silent or conforming.
No.
It's about being strategic,
Exactly.
knowing when to push back
Yeah.
and when to conserve our energy for more impactful actions.
Exactly.
But how do we know which battles to choose?
Right.
How do we discern between constructive critique
Yeah.
and just being contrarian
Yeah, good point.
for the sake of it?
You raise an important point.
It's easy to get caught up in the thrill of rebellion
It is.
without actually offering anything of value.
Yeah.
So how do we make sure we're doing it right?
The source emphasizes that our critique should be grounded in a genuine desire for positive change,
Okay.
for creating a more just and equitable world.
So it's not just about tearing things down.
Oh.
It's about actually trying to build something better.
Exactly.
I like that.
So ask yourself, what are you trying to achieve with this critique?
Yeah.
What kind of world are you trying to create?
It's about being mindful of our intentions and making sure our actions are aligned with our values.
Exactly.
This is all incredibly insightful.
It is.
But I want to bring it back to our listener for a moment.
Yeah, of course.
You know, what are some key takeaways they can apply to their own lives?
I think one of the most important takeaways is recognizing how deeply those societal narratives and systems influence us, often without us even realizing it.
Right.
And developing the critical thinking skills to question these influences and make more conscious choices.
So it's about becoming more conscious participants
Yes.
in our own lives
Absolutely.
and the world around us.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that.
Another key takeaway is cultivating that verticality, that inner strength and autonomy that allows us to navigate those complex systems without losing ourselves.
Without getting lost in the sauce.
Exactly.
Yeah, so developing that strong sense of self-worth,
Yes.
trusting our judgment, finding our own unique path,
Absolutely.
becoming empowered individuals,
Yeah.
capable of thinking for ourselves,
Exactly.
and making choices that are aligned with our values.
That's the goal.
I love it.
It is empowering.
It is.
And finally, it's crucial to remember that this journey of self-discovery and societal critique isn't a solo mission.
Okay.
Finding our tribe, our community
Right.
of like-minded individuals who can support and challenge us is essential.
Surrounding ourselves with people who inspire us, encourage us to grow,
Yeah.
help us stay true to ourselves.
It makes a difference.
It does.
It really does.
This has been a truly thought-provoking conversation.
It has.
But before we go any further,
Okay.
the source brings up this fascinating concept.
Okay, what's that?
They call it meganoia.
Meganoia.
It challenges us to reconsider our relationship
Okay.
with truth and uncertainty.
Interesting.
That sounds like the perfect place to pick up in part 2 of this deep dive.
It does.
So don't go anywhere.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to our exploration of societal influence and personal transformation.
That cliffhanger about meganoia has me intrigued.
All right.
You mentioned it challenges how we relate to truth and uncertainty. That's a pretty hefty concept to unpack.
It is. It is.
So are they saying we should just abandon the search for truth altogether?
Well, I don't think they're saying abandon it completely.
Okay.
But maybe shift our approach.
Okay.
Like, what if instead of clinging to these rigid beliefs, we embrace the inherent ambiguity of the human experience?
I think I see where this is going.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that truth can be contextual, fluid, and multifaceted.
Absolutely.
What might seem like a contradiction from one perspective could make perfect sense from another.
Exactly. Exactly.
So there's not always one right answer.
Not necessarily. The source encourages us to cultivate a sense of what they call epistemological humility.
Okay, break that down for me.
All right, so epistemological humility.
Yeah.
It's basically acknowledging the limits of our own knowledge.
Okay.
And being open to the possibility that we might be wrong.
So not being afraid to say, I don't know.
Exactly, exactly.
I might be wrong about this.
Yeah, and being open to learning from others who might have different perspectives.
I like that.
It can be incredibly freeing.
How so?
Well, it allows us to engage in dialogue and debate without feeling threatened or defensive.
Right, because we're not so attached to being right all the time.
Exactly.
That's a valuable skill.
It is.
Especially these days when everyone seems so polarized.
Yeah.
And entrenched in their beliefs.
It's hard to have a conversation.
It is.
Where people are willing to listen to each other.
Yeah, everyone just wants to shout their own opinion.
Exactly.
And not really hear what the other side has to say.
Yeah, it's a shame.
It is.
But we can change that.
Hopefully. By cultivating this epistemological humility, it allows us to have more productive conversations.
Yeah, where we can actually learn from each other.
Exactly.
Even if we don't agree in the end.
Exactly.
Now, speaking of polarized beliefs.
Right.
You mentioned earlier that the source critiques specific social movements and ideologies.
Yes.
Including feminism, utilitarianism, and the university system.
I do.
How did those examples tie into this bigger picture?
Okay, so the source uses these examples to illustrate how even ideologies with good intentions can sometimes get stuck in the very systems they're trying to change.
Interesting.
So when we become too attached to a particular ideology, we risk losing sight of individual experiences and the complexities of the real world.
So even when we're fighting for a cause we believe in, it's important to maintain a sense of critical distance.
Absolutely.
And avoid falling into dogma.
Yes, yes, exactly.
It's about recognizing that no single ideology has all the answers. No, of course not.
And that even the most progressive movements can have blind spots.
They can.
Right, we have to be willing to acknowledge that.
We do.
Okay, let's dive into some of those specific examples.
Okay.
You mentioned that the source critiques certain aspects of feminism.
I did.
Could you elaborate on that?
Sure. So the source acknowledges the crucial role of feminism in challenging patriarchal structures and advocating for women's rights.
Of course.
However, they also suggest that some expressions of feminism can fall into the trap of demonizing all men or presenting a very rigid view of gender roles. And this, they argue, can actually perpetuate the same binary system that ultimately limits both men and women.
So it's like they're trying to break free from one system, but they end up creating another one.
Exactly, and it's still limiting.
Right, it's still a box.
It is.
Just a different shaped box. It sounds like their critique is aimed at encouraging a more nuanced understanding of gender.
It is.
That moves beyond those simplistic narratives.
Absolutely. Recognizing the full spectrum of human experience.
Yeah.
Beyond rigid categories and labels.
So it's not just about men versus women.
No, not at all.
It's about recognizing that there's a whole range of experiences and identities.
And that's where true liberation lies.
That's a powerful idea.
It is.
Now, what about their critique of utilitarianism?
All right, so with utilitarianism, the source takes issue with its focus on maximizing happiness for the greatest number of people.
Right. The greatest good for the greatest number.
Exactly. But they argue that even with good intentions, this emphasis on the greater good could be used to justify sacrificing individual rights or needs.
It's like that classic ethical dilemma.
Oh, yeah.
Would you sacrifice one life to save 10?
Exactly.
Utilitarianism might say yes.
It might.
But it feels instinctively wrong.
It does.
To prioritize a numerical outcome over the inherent value of each individual.
Right. You're getting right to the heart of it.
Yeah.
The source highlights the potential dangers of this type of thinking, suggesting it could lead to a dehumanizing calculation that disregards individual experiences and values.
So it's about finding that balance between collective well-being and individual autonomy.
Exactly.
Making sure that in our pursuit of the greater good, we don't trample on the rights and freedoms of individuals.
Absolutely. That's crucial.
Yeah.
True progress requires both a concern for the common good and a deep respect for individual rights and freedoms.
So it's not an either situation.
No, it's both hand.
Okay, I like that.
It's about finding that balance.
Right, because we need both.
We do.
The individual and the collective.
To thrive.
To create a truly just and equitable society.
Exactly.
This all makes sense in theory.
It does.
But do they offer any real-world examples of how this utilitarian thinking can play out and potentially go wrong?
They point to certain social policies and economic systems that prioritize efficiency and productivity above individual well-being.
But it's all about the bottom line.
Yeah, and the source suggests that these systems can lead to exploitation, alienation, and a sense of meaninglessness for those trapped within them.
That's a pretty bleak picture.
It can be.
It makes you question how much of our modern world is structured around this utilitarian logic.
It does.
You know, potentially sacrificing individual fulfillment for the sake of things like economic growth or technological progress.
It's a crucial question.
It is.
And one the source encourages us to grapple with.
Right, because we need to be aware of these systems.
We do.
So we can start to envision and create alternatives that prioritize both individual well-being and collective flourishing.
That's the goal.
That's a tall order.
It is.
But a worthy one.
It is.
Okay, I want to bring things back to our listener for a moment.
Yeah, let's do that.
What are some practical steps they can take to apply these ideas to their own lives?
So one concrete step is to start paying attention to the language we use. And the assumptions baked into that language.
Interesting.
The source highlights how certain words and phrases can perpetuate harmful stereotypes or reinforce existing power structures.
Interesting.
Often without us realizing it.
Can you give me some specific examples of that?
Sure. They talk about the language used to describe men and women. Especially the way certain traits are frequently attributed to one gender over the other.
Oh, I see.
And they also point to how we talk about success, often equating it with material wealth or social status.
Like you have to have a big house and a fancy car to be successful.
Exactly. And that creates a very narrow and limiting definition of what it means to live a fulfilling life.
It's more than just money and possessions.
It is.
So it's about becoming more mindful of the ways language shapes our perception of reality.
Exactly.
By challenging those linguistic conventions that limit our thinking, we could potentially create space for new possibilities and perspectives.
We can.
So it's about changing the way we talk about things to change the way we think about things.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's fascinating.
It is.
Another practical step is to actively cultivate a sense of curiosity and open-mindedness.
Yes, that's key.
Being willing to engage with perspectives that are different from our own.
It's so important.
But that's easier said than done.
It is.
Especially in a world where people are so quick to judge and condemn anyone who doesn't share their views.
It's true.
It can feel risky to even entertain an opposing viewpoint.
It can.
You might get attacked for it.
You might.
Online or even in person.
It's unfortunate, but it's the reality we live in.
It is. So how do we overcome that fear?
Well, it takes courage. And a willingness to step outside our comfort zones.
Right. To be willing to be uncomfortable.
To be uncomfortable, yeah.
Because growth often happens outside of our comfort zone.
It does.
The source emphasizes the importance of cultivating empathy.
Yeah.
Recognizing that everyone is operating from their own unique set of experiences and beliefs.
Everyone has their own story.
Right. So rather than meeting disagreement with judgment, We should approach it with a sense of curiosity and a genuine desire to understand where the other person is coming from.
Exactly.
Even if we don't agree with their conclusions.
Even if we don't agree, yeah.
Okay, so it's about listening to understand.
Yes.
Not just listening to respond.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that our own perspective is just one of many.
Right.
And that we can learn and grow from engaging with the full spectrum of human experience.
It's about expanding our horizons.
It is.
This is great stuff.
It is.
But are there any techniques or practices that can help someone develop this open-mindedness and empathy?
Yeah, they suggest practices like active listening, where we focus on truly hearing and understanding the other person's perspective without interrupting or immediately formulating our own response.
So really trying to put ourselves in their shoes.
Exactly.
And see the world from their point of view.
Yeah, and they also recommend seeking out diverse sources of information.
Okay.
And exposing ourselves to different cultures and ways of life.
So it's about stepping outside of our echo chambers.
Yes.
And actively expanding our horizons.
Absolutely.
I love it.
It's a journey.
It is.
A lifelong journey.
And I think we could all benefit from taking it.
I agree.
But I know we're just scratching the surface of this topic.
We are.
There's still so much more to explore.
There is.
And that's what makes this deep dive so exciting.
It is exciting.
There are always more layers to uncover.
Yes.
And more insights to glean from these rich and challenging sources.
And speaking of exciting discoveries...
Oh, you got me on the edge of my seat here.
I'm ready to delve deeper into some of those specific examples you mentioned earlier.
Okay, like what?
Like the infrahumanization tactics used in military training.
Right.
Or the manipulation techniques employed by pickup artists.
Yeah, and don't forget about the cults.
And the cults, of course.
Those examples are just fascinating to me.
They are. They provide a glimpse into the darker side of societal influence.
Right, and how those larger forces can impact individuals on a very personal level.
Absolutely.
That's like we've got a fascinating part 3 ahead of us.
We do.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back.
Yeah.
I'm ready to hear more about those intriguing examples we touched on before the break.
Yeah.
You know, military training, pickup artists, cults.
Right.
Those seem like pretty extreme cases of societal influence.
They are, but they offer a fascinating look at how even seemingly benign systems can exert a powerful influence on individuals, especially when those individuals aren't aware of the underlying mechanisms.
Right, they're not even conscious of it. Okay, so let's start with military training.
Right.
I remember you mentioned something about infrahumanization as a tactic used to prepare soldiers for combat.
Yeah, so the source argues that by stripping soldiers of their individuality and instilling this sense of blind obedience, military training can create a kind of societal hypnosis that makes it easier for them to kill without questioning orders.
That's a chilling thought.
It is.
It really highlights the potential dangers of unchecked authority and the suppression of individual critical thinking.
For sure.
So are they suggesting that all military training is inherently harmful?
Not necessarily, but they raise important questions about the ethics of using these psychological techniques to prepare soldiers for war.
Right.
You know, it's crucial to consider the long-term psychological effects on these individuals and whether such methods truly serve the best interests of both the soldiers and society.
So it's a very complex issue with no easy answers.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, shifting gears a bit. Let's talk about the pickup artist community.
Right.
You mentioned they use manipulation techniques.
They do.
Often derived from hypnosis and neurolinguistic programming.
Yeah, things like that.
To seduce women.
Right.
I mean, isn't that just a harmless form of flirting?
Well, the source argues that while these techniques might be effective in the short term, they ultimately dehumanize both the manipulator and the manipulated.
Okay.
They create this dynamic of power and control
Yeah.
that undermines the possibility of genuine connection and intimacy.
So even in the realm of dating and relationships,
Right.
these manipulative tactics can have a corrosive effect on genuine human connection.
They can.
It's not just about getting a date.
No.
It's about how we treat each other.
Exactly.
And the kind of connections we build.
Yeah, the source suggests that true intimacy requires authenticity,
Okay.
vulnerability, and mutual respect.
Right. None of which are fostered by these manipulative techniques.
Not at all.
It's a reminder to be aware of those red flags in our own relationships and to prioritize genuine connections over superficial charm.
Absolutely.
Now, the last example you mentioned was cults.
Right.
How do they fit into this conversation about societal influence?
So cults often prey on individuals who are seeking a sense of belonging and meaning.
Okay.
And they offer them this rigid, authoritarian structure that provides a false sense of security and certainty.
Right, like they have all the answers.
Exactly. And this can be seen as a form of societal hypnosis.
Oh, interesting.
Trapping individuals in this web of unquestioning obedience and dependence.
So they lose their ability to think for themselves.
Yeah, they become completely reliant on the cult leader.
And the cult's ideology.
Yeah, it's really fascinating.
It is. It's a bit terrifying to see how these manipulative tactics can be applied in such different contexts.
Yeah.
From military training to dating to religious groups.
It really underscores the importance of critical thinking and being aware of how we can be influenced.
Because it can happen to anyone.
It can.
If we're not careful.
Exactly.
This is all incredibly valuable stuff.
It is.
But I'm curious, does the source offer any specific strategies?
Well, they emphasize the importance of verticality.
Right, that inner strength.
Yeah, developing a strong sense of self-worth.
Okay.
Trusting our own judgment. And seeking guidance from within, rather than blindly following external authorities.
So it's about cultivating that inner compass.
Yes, exactly.
That inner strength that allows us to navigate the world without being swayed by the opinions or expectations of others.
Without losing ourselves in the process.
Right. But how do we actually develop that inner compass?
They suggest practices like introspection, meditation, and even therapy as valuable tools for cultivating self-awareness and connecting with our inner wisdom.
So it's about taking the time.
It is.
To quiet the noise of the external world and listen to that still, small voice within.
Exactly.
It's about creating that inner sanctuary.
Yes.
That space where we can connect with our authentic selves and cultivate a stronger sense of who we are and what we truly value.
And from that place of inner knowing, we can start to challenge those external narratives that no longer serve us.
That's powerful.
It is.
We can start to create a life that is more aligned with our true selves.
Absolutely.
This has been an incredibly rich and insightful conversation.
It has.
We've covered so much ground.
We have.
From restorative justice to cultural myths, societal hypnosis, and the importance of critical thinking.
Yeah, it's been a lot.
I feel like I've gained a whole new set of lenses through which to view the world.
I'm glad to hear that.
And I hope our listeners feel similarly equipped to continue their own exploration.
Absolutely. Keep questioning.
Right.
Keep exploring.
Keep diving deep.
And keep an eye out for those societal influences.
Because they're everywhere.
They are.
It's been a true deep dive.
It has.
Thank you for guiding us through this complex and fascinating terrain.
My pleasure.
And to our listeners, keep those minds open.
Yes.
And stay curious.
The world is full of wonders.
It is.
Just waiting to be discovered.
All right. That's it for this deep dive.
We'll see you next time.